Hi, my name is Caleb Osterling. You're watching Prototank, and today we're going to be using After Effects to make it look like text, shapes, and logos are floating above a surface in 3D. It's very, very easy to do, and it looks real nice. Let's jump right into it. So I'm going to use the same clip as I did for my last video. It's just a simple orbiting shot. You're going to go ahead and click on the layer that you're going to be adding your text to, and you're just going to go to tracker. If you don't see the tracker window anywhere, you can go ahead up to window and tracker, and you just press the button track camera, and it'll start to track the camera. It takes a little bit. I've actually already done it though. It's already solved, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into the next part. If you click on the track camera effect, you can see there's all these little dots here. As I move, you can see they're tracked in time, and they're tracked in 3D. And there's this red target, and basically this is just all the different surfaces. If I go over here, you can see that it's kind of switching directions, trying to show us which way this surface is kind of facing. So all of these areas over here, we can tell that, you know, it's the same surface, it's the table, and that's where we want the text to appear. If I right click, I get a bunch of options: create text and camera, create solid in camera, create null in camera. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to use create shadow catcher, camera, and light. And once I click on that, as you can see, we have a couple of different new layers added. One of them is a 3D camera tracker, or a 3D tracker camera, sorry. And what that is it is a 3D camera that moves according to the tracking data that the camera tracker pulled out for us. So anything that we add in 3D is going to move right along with this table. The next thing we have is we have a layer here called the shadow catcher. And this layer is very important because basically any object that we place that's able to cast shadows from our 3D light is going to appear on that shadow catcher. So actually one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this layer. If you can see, there's a red box showing where the layer is. I'm going to make it nice and big to make sure that wherever the shadow is going to be, it doesn't get cut off. Alright, then of course, like I said, the last layer that we got is our light. You can't see it here. If I zoom out plenty, you see this light is all the way over there. So we can fix that in a little bit. Now that we have our shadow catcher and our camera and our light, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do our first part, which is adding text. I'm going to click on my table layer again. I'm going to click on my 3D camera tracker, and I'm going to right click. And as you can see, our options have changed slightly because we already have a camera and we already have a light. I'm going to hit create text. And there you see it has created text. It has placed it very big, kind of right in the middle of everything. And you can see that the text looks black. If I actually click on the text though, and I come over to my character, the text is actually white. The reason why it looks black is because there is a 3D light, and the light is not hitting the text the right way. So we're going to touch on how we can fix that up in just a little bit. The first thing I'm going to do though, because this text is flat on the table and I want it to be standing up, is I'm going to go to my text layer. Here it says text, and I'm going to go to transform, and I'm going to go to the X rotation, and I'm just going to change it to 90 degrees. So now it's standing up. And as you can see, we see some of that white now because the light is hitting the side of the text, and it's kind of feathering off into a darker gray over here. So as we zoom back again, we can see, here's the light over here, and it is shining that way. You can also see the shadow being cast back, and it's disappearing. The shadow is disappearing where the shadow catcher layer is not. You remember how I talked about how we want to make that big? If I move the shadow catcher layer around, we can see that's the only place where a shadow can appear. I'm not going to adjust it any further that way because the shadow is not going to be facing that way. and I'll talk about that in just a moment. First, why don't we go ahead and adjust the size of the text, and to do that I can click on the text layer, hit scale, and I can go ahead and bring this down. If you hold down the shift key while you drag, it makes everything move a lot quicker. And here we go, I'm kind of happy with that. Now here's where we have a problem. If we look at these cards in which direction the shadow is being cast according to the cards versus my text, you can see the lighting is not matching up. So I'm going to adjust this text a little bit. I'm going to press W so I can rotate. I'm going to click on the Y-axis and move it this way. All right, now we're going to move this light. So we could scroll all the way out and try to, move this on these axes, and that it's just kind of hard to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down here, and we see right next to where it says active camera, we see one view. I'm going to click that drop down. I'm going to switch to 2 views horizontal. And what it's going to do is it gives us first the active camera view, and then on this side we have the top view. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the top of everything. Here's our 3D track camera, this little box right here. If I move through the timeline, you can see that camera is moving. And then here's that light. I'm gonna go ahead and click on this light. I'm gonna click on the Z axis, and I'm gonna slide it up. And I'm going to adjust it until we get that shadow to kind of move in the same direction as the shadow coming off the stack of cards. So that's about the direction, but this shadow is way too long. So I'm going to click on the Y axis, and I'm going to drag it up until we get a shadow that kind of closer matches the direction and length. And I think for the sake of right now, that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to one view, and I'm going to click on my text. I'm going to grab the Y axis. I'm going to move it up slightly until I see the bottom of this text matching up with the bottom of the shadow. I don't want space between it, and I don't want them overlapping because that looks weird. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and we can see that looks a little bit better. I think it's still overlapping a little bit, so I'll just bring it up. And there we go. That's pretty good. Now the next thing is, once again, our text is now black. The shadow is really, really dark and very defined, whereas the shadow coming off of these cards is not that dark or refined. So to fix this, we're going to go to our light options first. Click on the light layer, light options, and what we're going to do is we're going to go down to shadow darkness, and we're going to bring that down until we feel like it kind of matches up with the cards. Actually, it shouldn't match up with the cards entirely because this is window lighting and the cards are blocking off a lot of that light, so we're gonna get a darker shadow. But because none of these letters are nearly as thick as this block of cards over here, it would actually be a little bit less dark realistically. And also because it's window light, we're gonna have really soft shadows, really diffused shadows. So I'm gonna crank this diffusion up a whole bunch. And as you can see, it's making the shadow a lot softer. So we want nice diffused shadows. And there, that looks like it matches a whole lot better. And so this is pretty cool. As we move through time, we're gonna go ahead and see that the text looks like it's sitting on the table. And that looks pretty good. Now to fix the issue of the light and the text being completely black, you could do two things. You can either go up to your layer and you can add a new light. I'm gonna go ahead and hit ambient for now. That way I don't need to worry about where the light actually is. And then you can adjust the light options. So for ambient light, it's simple. It's just, is it bright or dark? That's one way to do it. But another little trick you could do is click on the text, go to your material options, and here you have some options here, and one of them is accepts lights, and that is on right now. If I click off, basically what it means is no matter what 3D lights are there, it is not going to affect the text. You can also have it turn off cast shadows, or you can do something else that's kind of cool, which is cast shadow only. So now we only see the shadow and not the text itself, which may be useful for some things, not for this, I don't think. Alright, so there you go. That was pretty simple. That text is tracked on. It looks really nice. The only thing now that I'm going to do is, just for the fun of it, I'm going to go ahead and add a little animation. So I'm going to go to Effects and Presets. I'm going to go to Animation Presets, Text. I want to go into, I actually want to find one called Bounce In. And here it is under Miscellaneous. I'm just going to drag that onto the text. And here we go. Okay. Now that looks pretty neat. Something looks a little weird about it though, and what that is that it doesn't have any motion blur. Simple fix, simple fix. Over here we got these three little overlapping circles. If you put your mouse over it, it says enables motion blur for all layers with the motion blur switch set. So I'm gonna click that. I'm gonna come over to these little boxes in my text layer, and we see a matching symbol right there. I'm gonna click, and that's gonna turn on my motion blur. So now, as these texts move in, they have a little bit of motion blur, and it looks like they're actually there. Yay! And there you have it. That's how you add text in, and you can go ahead and you can mess with all the different little presets and animations and stuff, and you can do all sorts of fun things with that. Alright, so that's text. Let's go ahead and move on to the next thing. I'm going to just shut off this text layer, and I'm going to leave everything else that we had from before, and I'm going to add in a shape layer. So shape layers are great because it's almost like whatever you can imagine to create, you can create. And I'm going to go ahead and click on my table and right click. As you can see, there is no create shape layer. You can create a solid, you can create another shadow catcher, you can create text. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create though a null, which is basically just a nothing. It's just a thing that is there for holding data. I'm going to make it disappear by clicking this eyeball box so I don't have to look at it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to Layer, New, and I'm going to create a shape layer. I'm going to solo this by clicking this box, and here we go. Let's build on the shape layer. So drop down the shape layer. It says Contents. I'm going to click Add, and I'm going to add an ellipse, and I'm going to add a stroke. And under stroke, I'm just going to bring up the width a little bit so it's easier to see our ellipse. And then under ellipse path, I'm just going to bring up the size. All right. And I'm just going to be a little fun with this. I'm going to go ahead and add a fill. I'm going to add it under the stroke. I'm going to make it green. I'm going to try to make like a little like goofy looking makeshift hologram thing. I'm going to add in a repeater. I'm going to add that actually above the fill. So repeater just repeats whatever is above it. I'm going to go to transform repeater. Position is at 100. I'm going to hit 0. I'm going to bring down the scale so we get some smaller circles like this. Then I'm going to add something called trim paths. And what trim paths does, I will show you. It simply cuts the path above it into pieces. Watch what happens. As I turn it on, you see it's trimming the path. It's cutting it up. You have your offset. You can mess with that, make things rotate and spin. That's cool. I'm going to turn it where it says trim multiple shapes. It says simultaneously. I'm going to put it to individually. And I'm going to adjust its offset until I get something kind of like this. Here we go. That's the sort of thing I want. All right. Now I'm going to hit my repeater, and go to rotation. I'm gonna make a keyframe, slide forward a little bit. I'm going to adjust that rotation. Now you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm making like this sci-fi sort of thing. All right, I think that's a decent speed. Actually, I want it maybe a little bit slower, so I'll just move that keyframe out. And then to make sure that that keeps going throughout the rest of the duration, I'm just going to hold down the Option button or Alt. I'm going to click the little rotation stopwatch, and this opens my expressions, and I'm just going to type in loop out. As you can see, it's finishing there for me. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to add a quotation. Here we have this option continue. I'm going to hit enter, and what that's going to do is that's just going to continue the keyframe for me. By the way, adding an expression like that you can do to any kind of keyframe. Okay, so anytime you see a stopwatch, you can hit option, you can type that in, and it'll continue these keyframes for you. So as you can see, it's constantly rotating. That's never going to change, and I like it a lot. So with all that being said, let's unsolo it. How do we get this to track to the table? If I hit the 3D enable 3D button right here, we can actually see the shape is there now, and it's moving with the table, but it's not really in the place we want it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to parent it using this pick whip over to the null, and now it's going to move right according to the, oh sorry, now I'm going to parent it to this null, and now it's moving right with the null, but it's not exactly where the null is. So I'm going to back up just a little bit, and we're going to try this again. Enable 3D. This time though, I'm going to grab the pick whip, I'm going to drag it over to the null, and I'm going to hold down the shift button as I release, and not only is it going to parent it to the null, but it puts it exactly where the null is, and that's what we want. Then I'm going to select my shape layer, transform, and I'm just going to adjust its position. Actually, I'm going to grab it like this on the axis. I'm just going to lift it up so it's above the table slightly. Now if you notice, there's no shadow appearing. This is because we are adding the shape layer in versus having the camera tracker generate it for us. So what we have to do is go to your material options. Here it says cast shadows. We can see that that is off. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn it on, and now we get a shadow. I'm going to turn off accept lights because it's supposed to be a little hologram guy, and that should be generating light. Also, it shouldn't really be casting too much of a shadow. So what I'm going to do is there's this option called light transmission. I'm going to bring that up a little bit, and what that's going to do is it's actually going to make the green kind of appear on the table a little bit. If you can see that, let's zoom in. You can see the light is basically shining through here and popping some of that green onto the table. And so that's pretty cool. Last one, I'm going to just keep everything I already have, including this null, because I'm going to be adding in another object that you cannot add in using just the camera tracker. I'm going to be adding in my logo. There it is. Boop. There's my logo. And once again, if I just go ahead and throw that into 3D by enabling 3D, it kind of just appears nowhere. If I want it to appear where that null is, which I do, I'm going to go ahead and click the pick whip, drag it down to the null, hold down the shift button and release, and there we go. It is now attached to the table. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on this logo. I'm going to bring it up. Go to my transform settings, and I'm going to bring the X rotation to 90 degrees so it's facing upwards. I'm going to go to my material options, hit cast shadows on so we can see our shadows there, and I'm going to turn off accept lights. Not that that really did anything, I guess. And there you go. As you can see, it's just pretty easy to start adding things. What I'm going to go ahead and do with this though, to make it a little more fun, is go to my transform. I'm going to show you more of those expressions. I'm going to take my position and I'm going to hit a keyframe, and I'm going to take my Y rotation and I'm going to hit a keyframe. I'm going to move forward just a little bit, and I'm going to bring the position up the Y axis just a little bit, so it's like it comes up a tad, and then I'm going to rotate it just a little bit, like so. Alrighty. Oops. Sorry. Rotate it using the Y rotation. Sometimes if you just rotate using the axis that you see in the active camera view, it's going to adjust your orientation down here, not your Y rotation. So it depends on where you put your keyframes or how you want to do that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two expressions. On the rotation, I want it to constantly rotate, kind of like a pickup item from a video game or something. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Option, click on the stopwatch, and I'm going to do that same thing that I did last time. I'm going to type in loop out, parentheses, quotation, continue, quotation, end parentheses, enter. And now it'll consistently rotate. But for where I had it rise, I'm going to hit Option, hit the stopwatch. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to do loop out, end parentheses. This time I'm going to do ping pong. And what it's going to do is it's going to bounce between my first keyframe and second keyframe back and forth continuously. See, so it kind of looks like a pickup item from a video game. A little choppy, so once again we're going to hit these keyframes, and we're going to hit that F9 button to get that ease out so it looks nice and smooth, and throw on our motion blur. And that's what that looks like. So not very much work, but it looks pretty good. It looks like it's actually sitting there floating above the table. Really easy to do. And again, this little animation I threw together, I mean, it was just to show kind of what you could do. Once you have your tracking data set up and you've added, stuff to the, you've added your light and you've adjusted it and you've adjusted your camera, adding anything is just a matter of clicking on the first layer and right clicking, and you can just add whatever you want, and it's just so easy to do. Alright, that's just about it. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you found it to be useful, go ahead and hit subscribe so you can see when more content comes out. Thank you again. My name's Caleb, and this is ProtoTank.